So picture this. You're just your average 12-year-old middle school girl, minding your own business on a museum trip. And then, out of the blue, you awaken the mummified body of Egyptian pharaoh Tutenstein, who has been in a coffin for nearly 3,000 years. But rather than a fierce ruler, this mummy turns out to be a quirky kid. I mean, you don't expect that to pop out of a coffin every day, right? So, strap in, because this is shaping up to be one hilariously unexpected adventure. The show begins with Cleo Carter, a girl interested in Egyptian history, and her cat Luxor resurrecting Tutenstein. During this process, Luxor gains the ability to speak and becomes Tutenstein's advisor. Meanwhile, Set, the god of chaos, discovers Tut's return and aims to steal the Scepter of Was for ultimate power. After Set's minions attempt to steal the scepter, Tut reveals Set's punishment for assaulting Osiris, being condemned to the darkest pit of the Egyptian underworld. The gang repels the minions using clever tactics and uses the scepter to close the gate between worlds, thus forming a formidable team. In the museum, a new tomb containing Tut's personal items arrives and an old man, fearing a curse, warns against opening it. The museum staff ignores his advice, so he uses a relic to summon the ancient crocodile god Amut, who targets Tut. To rid himself of Amut's threat, Tut undergoes a test of purity and successfully passes. Amut is forced to retreat, and Cleo disguises herself to divert media attention away from the museum, ending their adventure on a positive note. The next day, Professor Bedity tasks Cleo with cleaning the museum for an upcoming exhibit, as a news reporter named Rosalie was set to interview him. Tut, not wanting Cleo to do all the work, uses a spell to bring some dolls to life to help with the cleaning. Meanwhile, Bedity discovers that Tut is missing from his coffin, prompting Tut to hurry and get rid of the animated dolls and return to his coffin before anyone else notices. Thankfully, everything eventually works out in the end as Cleo and Tut cover their tracks. Tut, feeling uncomfortable in the modern world, decides to use his magic to transform everything back into ancient Egypt. However, his spell goes awry, and chaos ensues as the ancient Egyptian is stuck with a flood. Much to Tut's surprise, this new Egypt proves to be just as challenging for him to navigate, leading to even more complications. Eventually, Tut decides to use his magic again to restore the world to its normal state, resolving the issue and returning everything to the modern era. Tut becomes fascinated with movies and wishes to stay up late to watch them with Cleo. He makes a request to Ra, the sun god, to delay the sunrise, but this request inadvertently causes time to freeze. Tut realizes his responsibility in the situation and sets out to locate Ra. He learns that Set, who is still seeking his scepter, has imprisoned Ra with the help of Apep and uses his magic to free him. Ra defeats Set, ultimately restoring everything back to normal. Tut becomes angry when he realizes he doesn't have his own pyramid, and his frustration unintentionally summons Hathor, the goddess of love. Unfortunately, Hathor's uncontrollable powers cause her to go on a rampage, posing a significant threat. Cleo and Tut work together to create a potion that returns Hathor to her normal state. Hathor apologizes for her actions and uses her powers to repair the damage she caused. To make amends, Cleo asks Hathor to build a small pyramid inside the museum in Tut's name, which not only pleases Hut, but also attracts many visitors to the museum, ultimately resolving the situation. Tut develops a crush on Cleo's best friend, Natasha, and decides to summon Bess, the protector of children, to cast a love spell on her. However, the spell goes haywire, leading Tut to ponder whether his feelings for Natasha are genuine or merely a passing crush. After careful consideration, Tut opts to remove the spell when he realizes that he and Natasha don't share much in common, and Natasha remains unaware of the love spell incident. Tut accompanies Cleo on her trip to Memphis, Tennessee, hoping to find statues built in his honor, but ends up disappointed. He becomes frustrated when he encounters modern music artists claiming to be kings. In his frustration, Tut unintentionally splits into two spirits, Ka and Ba, both resembling him but with contrasting personalities, one kind and the other bratty. Cleo discovers that Tut must reunite these spirits with his body by sunset to prevent his death. A race against time ensues as Ka and Ba cause chaos in Memphis. Ultimately, they manage to capture Ka and Ba and reunite them with Tut's body, saving him from impending doom. Tut's coffin is placed in a storage room, prompting him to move in with Cleo temporarily. Cleo's mom, Iris, goes out of town, leaving Cleo and her grandpa to deal with Tut's antics. Tut begins redecorating the house to resemble ancient Egypt, creating chaos in the process. Cleo realizes she needs to restore the house to its original state before Iris returns. Tut calls upon one of his ancient friends to undo the changes just in time for Iris's arrival. He then apologizes to Cleo for not respecting her house, and they manage to resolve the situation. Tut cheats in a game of Senate with the Egyptian goddess Isis, leading her to summon a ghost to punish him. To his surprise, the ghost is an old friend from his past who takes Tut on a journey through time, showing him the consequences of cheating. When given a second chance to play against Isis, Tut decides not to cheat, even though he has the opportunity to do so. He loses the game but gains the respect of the goddess for his honesty. As a result, he is allowed to return to his friends, having learned the value of fair play. When Cleo catches a cold, Tut becomes overly worried, believing she is going to die. In his concern, he books an appointment with an ancient doctor and transports Cleo to ancient Egypt to see the doctor he prefers. Despite Cleo only having a cold, the doctor insists she is on the verge of death and pressures her to choose a mummy for herself. When Cleo is forced into a coffin, the gang works together to escape. In the end, Cleo's fever subsides due to the medication she took earlier, but it's Luxor who ends up catching the cold next. In the museum, a new alarm system accidentally awakens Tut, who in frustration breaks it. Unbeknownst to him, this mishap aids two thieves in stealing the crown of Geb, which had its alarm disabled. Tut uses his scepter to locate the crown in a warehouse and summons Geb, the god associated with it, but Geb cannot return until a secret spell from the museum is enchanted. When the thieves return and pilfer the spell, Geb helps Tut and his friends thwart them. Tut recites the spell, allowing Geb to reclaim the crown. The thieves are apprehended, and all stolen items are recovered. Tut, feeling unappreciated for his good deeds, is surprised by a coronation party thrown by Cleo. However, the celebration is disrupted when Set's followers steal the Scepter of Was. Tut embarks on a journey to the underworld to retrieve it. In the underworld, it's revealed that the stolen item is a prop, while the real scepter remains with Tut. She tries to prevent their departure, but Tut uses the scepter's power to return to their world and returns the prop to Cleo, thwarting Set's scheme and saving the day. During a school trip to the museum, two troublesome students catch Tut's attention, and he befriends them, leading to mischief in public areas. Despite Cleo and Luxor's warnings, Tut continues to engage in troublesome behavior. As a result, he is brought to the Hall of Two Truths for trial. Facing punishment, Cleo and Luxor come to his rescue, demonstrating their loyalty and friendship. Their intervention leads to all charges being dropped, and Tut realizes the true value of Cleo and Luxor as his friends. When a new mammoth statue arrives at the museum and garners more attention than Tut's coffin, Tut becomes jealous and uses his scepter to send the mammoth to the underworld. Cleo, who has put considerable effort into the exhibit, is disappointed by this impulsive act. Tut takes her to the underworld to retrieve the statue, but they encounter two demons who fight over its possession. Tut cleverly manipulates the demons into fighting each other, creating an opportunity for them to escape with the mammoth. When Tut accidentally uses a mysterious scroll, it separates his shadow from his body, causing shadows to run amok and threaten his existence. Tut, Cleo, and Luxor embark on a mission to retrieve the lost shadows before the sun sets, but a shadow gobbler from the underworld arrives to consume these shadows. As the gobbler snatches everyone's shadows, the gang follows him into the underworld, where Tut cleverly manipulates the gobbler into eating his own shadow, ultimately defeating him. Cleo then uses the scroll to restore all the shadows, returning everything to normal in the end. Tut meets Cleo's young cousin, Thomas, inside the museum, and when he's left responsible for Thomas at Cleo's house, he accidentally loses him in the underworld. Recognizing the seriousness of the situation, the group ventures into the underworld to rescue Thomas. However, they encounter trouble when a terrifying demon captures Thomas, mistaking him for Tut. The demon presents Thomas before Set, the Egyptian god of chaos. Tut contemplates surrendering his scepter to save Thomas, but the scepter turns against Set when he grips it by the ears. Set is defeated, and Thomas is returned home safely. One day, Tut decides that Luxor needs help with his daily chores and brings in a new baboon servant named Hedgeware. However, Hedgeware is overly efficient and makes Luxor feel useless and unwanted. When Hedgeware's actions become too much to handle, it is Luxor who comes to the rescue and saves the day. Tut eventually realizes that he values Luxor as his loyal servant and decides to fire Hedgeware from his job. In the end, the two reconcile, ending their adventure on a positive note. Seeking power, Tut summons Horus, the god of the sky, who initially rejects him, but Tut's persistence leads Horus to return and grant Tut immense godly powers, making him a deity and giving him the Witcher Eye for protection. Tut uses his newfound abilities to fulfill his desires, but this angers Set, who tries to trap Tut in the underworld. Horus intervenes, and with Tut's help, they defeat Set's demons and thwart his plans. Tut eventually asks Horus to remove his godly powers, but Horus leaves him with the Witcher Eye as a reminder of this day. Seeking power, Tut summons Horus, the god of the sky, who initially rejects him, but Tut's persistence leads Horus to return and grant Tut immense godly powers, making him a deity and giving him the Witcher Eye for protection. Tut uses his newfound abilities to fulfill his desires, but this angers Set, who tries to trap Tut in the underworld. Horus intervenes, and with Tut's help, they defeat Set's demons and thwart his plans. Tut eventually asks Horus to remove his godly powers, but Horus leaves him with the Witcher Eye as a reminder of this day. Tut yearns to watch a movie meant for an older audience, but his youthful appearance bars him from entry. Even his attempt to enter a club fails. Frustrated, he breaks his ankh, returns to his coffin, and unexpectedly ages significantly. As an older man, he finally gets to watch the movie and dance at the club, but when he returns to his coffin, he wakes up even older the next day. Fearing he might not wake up at all, Cleo seeks Adam's help, who repairs the ankh, restoring Tut to his childlike self. Cleo wants to bond with Luxor, but Tut, feeling possessive, mistakenly uses a spell to switch Luxor and Cleo's bodies. As Tut searches for a reversal spell, a goddess arrives, claiming Cleo for herself. Following her, Tut explains the situation, and the goddess uses a spell to turn things back to normal. However, she decides to keep Luxor in her cat paradise, prompting Cleo and Tut to plan a daring rescue mission. Realizing Luxor's significance in their lives, the goddess allows Luxor to return, deepening their appreciation for him. While Tut is kidnapped by Set's demons, Cleo impersonates him during a photo session to avoid suspicion. In the underworld, Tut, without his scepter, is presented to Set, who sends his minions to retrieve it. Cleo, using the scepter, unwittingly opens a portal, allowing the demons to enter. She then leads them into a trap and embarks on a daring rescue mission in the underworld. Cleo successfully locates Tut, turning the demons against Set, and returns the scepter to Tut, enabling his return to the real world. On Halloween, Tut learns about trick-or-treating and summons a demon from the underworld to scare Cleo's friends. It goes as well as you'd expect. The entire group inadvertently falls into the underworld, and Cleo's friends are pursued by the demon. To rescue them, Tut summons 3 vengeful ghosts, whom the demon had wronged in the past. These ghosts take the demon away, and the group returns to the real world, with Cleo's friends believing that everything they experienced was just a special effects trick. Despite Luxor's warnings about the consequences, Tut is more interested in skateboarding than attending a crucial said festival. Cleo discovers that missing the festival will strip Tut of his scepter's powers and his right to rule, potentially allowing someone else like Set to take his place. She manages to warn him just in time, and Tut rushes to the festival but has to undergo a test without his scepter's power. Set tries to thwart his progress, but Tut's determination and newly acquired skateboarding skills help him complete the challenges, securing his position and preventing Set from seizing power. Tut increases the heat at the museum, which leads to high utility bills piling up. To save money, Bedity calls Gorman, who ends up stealing the museum's valuable artifacts. This theft results in Bedity being framed for the crime and subsequently sent to jail. Meanwhile, Gorman becomes the new chairman and continues to steal, prompting Cleo to collect evidence against him. However, she gets captured in the act, so Tut uses his scepter to scare Gorman and his gang off. In the end, Gorman is arrested, Bedity is freed, and Tut learns not to put financial troubles on others. When Jacob, the security guard, is almost fired due to his stupidity, Tut uses the Scroll of Thoth to grant Jacob unlimited knowledge. However, Thoth learns of this and sends his minions to kidnap Jacob, believing that he stole the powerful spell. Tut intervenes and takes the blame, leading Thoth to cast a spell that returns Tut to his previous state of stupidity. Tut, longing for the days of his human life, summons the goddess Isis to grant him a spell of regeneration. Ignoring her warnings, Tut proceeds with the spell and is transformed into flesh and blood once again. Enjoying the pleasures of life, he unintentionally resurrects a dinosaur and turns Cleo and Luxor into living skeletons. The T-Rex, under Set's influence, attempts to steal Tut's scepter, but is comically hindered by its small arms. In a moment of selfishness, Tut shatters the Ankh, undoing the chaos and returning everything, including himself, back to normal. One day, Tut begins insulting the Egyptian gods, prompting their immediate appearance to reprimand him. Meanwhile, Apep, seeking vengeance for Tut's previous interference with his plan to capture Ra, sets out for retaliation. Powerless without his abilities, Tut is just an ordinary child, so Cleo persuades him to apologize to the gods. Once he offers a sincere apology, the gods reappear, restoring his powers and banishing Apep to the underworld. In the end, Tut learns to be more polite with his words. Cleo creates replicas of the Scepter of Was for an exhibition, but Tut misplaces the real one. Jacob, the security guard, discovers it in his freezer and assumes it's a prop, keeping it for himself. Set learns of the situation and sends his demons to retrieve it, leading to a series of comedic mishaps involving Jacob. Eventually, Tut manages to reclaim his scepter and uses its power to send the demons back to the underworld, ensuring the safety of the artifact. Tut decides to separate his body parts to engage in various activities simultaneously. However, Set seizes this opportunity to send Amun to steal Tut's scepter. After several unsuccessful attempts, Set resorts to stealing Tut's body parts and demands the scepter in exchange for their return. Cleo recalls the myth of Isis locating Osiris's body parts in her Egyptology book and manages to find all of Tut's body parts except for his head, which Set possesses. Cleo ventures into the underworld, where they work together to restore Tut fully and return to the overworld. Set sends another one of his minions to claim the scepter, and Tut, who is eager to prove his fearlessness, remains oblivious. He engages in various antics, such as turning Luxor into a beast and hunting a mammoth, leading to the group being stranded in the underworld without the scepter. Luxor, left behind, manages to keep the scepter away from the demon while Cleo and Tut join forces to fight off Set's forces. Tut eventually admits he isn't as fearless and seeks Ra's help, who teleports him and Cleo back to the overworld, ensuring their safety. Tut is unable to sleep and shares that he had a snake named Fang who helped him sleep when he was alive. Cleo decides to take him to a pet store, where she buys a snake for him. However, Set seizes the opportunity and possesses the snake using demon snake god Denwen to steal the scepter. Tut is unaware of this possession and is manipulated into believing that Cleo is jealous of him, causing a rift between them. When Cleo discovers the truth, she uses the scepter to defend Tut. In the end, Tut learns to trust his true friends and uses the scepter to banish Denwen back to the underworld. Tut feels left out of Cleo's secret sleepover and tries various methods to infiltrate, such as delivering pizza and entering through the roof. When he finally gets in, Cleo reveals that it's a girls-only sleepover, so Tut decides to dress as a girl to attend. Feeling left out, Tut arranges a male-only slumber party and invites some gods over. Things quickly spiral out of control, leading Cleo to leave her friends and intervene to save the situation. In the end, Cleo and Tut reconcile, and Tut learns to give people the space they deserve. Set, in an attempt to obtain the scepter, sends a scorpion bracelet to possess the famous researcher Dr. Vanderweel. She creates fake documents to argue that Tut was never a pharaoh, leading Professor Bedity to consider removing the Tutenstein exhibit and auctioning Tut's belongings. Cleo discovers that Vanderweel was possessed all along, and the group follows the scorpion bracelet into the underworld to retrieve the scepter. With Vanderweel back in control of her actions, she helps the professor realize that it was all a mistake and the auction is called off. A new stone grave exhibit about Vikings arrives at the museum, inspiring Tut to raise his own army. He summons Sekhmet, who grants him 2 allies and 2 Viking enemies as a way to limit the destruction he might cause. However, Tut struggles to command his Viking soldiers and they return to the stone grave, leaving the Vikings free to wreak havoc unchecked. Sekhmet advises Tut to find his own inner strength, and Tut lures the Vikings into a clever trap, temporarily defeating them. Impressed by Tut's improvisation, Sekhmet returns the Viking warriors to their stone grave exhibit. In the end, Cleo finds the Mirror of Isis, an artifact his father was searching for before he died. Cleo, using the Mirror of Isis, has a vision of her father and transports herself and Tut 4,600 years into the past in hopes of finding him. Tut is excited to be back in his own time, but Cleo's search leads them to a boy who tricks them into entering a temple. Once inside, she learns that it was all part of Set's plan to lure them into his temple so they could free him. Despite this major setback, the group works together to destroy the temple and return home without Tut promising to find out what happened to Cleo's father. That's it for now, but if you liked the video, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to our channel for a lot more fun stuff. We appreciate you watching and look forward to bringing you more content soon.